The Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xE. It's electrified. So you can boogie woogie woogie into the forest. Boogie woogie woogie through the mud. Or boogie woogie woogie to work, where you boogie woogie woogie down the hall to your boss's office to tell him you quit. Sure got the boogie. Then you boogie woogie woogie to the elevator as he boogie woogie woogies after you, begging, please, take me with you. Boogie. The electrified Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xE. Learn more at Jeep.com. Jeep is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.
AT&T Fiber presents a straightforward moment.
Game on, baby. This looks great.
Yeah, streaming is amazing with AT&T Fiber.
Must be nice being a gagillionaire.
Yup, and the straightforward pricing has made me want to be straightforward with you. I'd much rather stream ice dancing.
Is that Alma Hansen and Bjorn Anders?
Straightforward is better. No equipment fees, no data caps, no price increase at 12 months. Live like a gagillionaire with AT&T Fiber. Limited availability in select areas. Visit att.com/hypergig for details.
Welcome to the Hypothalamic Amenorrhea Podcast. I'm Dani Sheriff, your host, certified fertility awareness practitioner, functional nutrition counselor, and founder of the HA Society, and of course, an HA recovery coach who has walked where you currently are walking. This is the place to come if you care about getting your period regularly. This podcast aims to educate, inform, and keep you motivated on your period and HA recovery track. So let's dive in. But last thing, nothing on the show should be taken as medical advice, so please seek the advice of your physician. The Holistic Hypothalamic Amenorrhea Practitioner Certification will be opening enrollment as of January 28th. So if turning your mess into your message and creating a career or adding recovery coaching to your existing health practice sounds like a path that you want to take, this is the certification for you. The HHAP, or the HAP, is an accredited course that is the only certification specifically for HA coaches and practitioners. In this program, Ashley and I have laid out our entire framework for working with women with hypothalamic amenorrhea. We're teaching you everything from the physiology to our intake process to protocol development, tracking progress, making adjustments, and all throughout we're teaching the soft skills needed to help get buy-in from your clients so that they can make the meaningful changes that are necessary to recover for life. So, if you're interested, head to our website, thehasociety.com/certification to download the full syllabus. And if you need to book a discovery call with us to ask any questions and learn whether or not the cert is right for you, you can do that there as well. Again, that's thehasociety.com/certification.
I'm good.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the HA Podcast. It's me, Dani. I am here. Also joined by Ashley, also joined by one of Ashley's past clients. It's been about 6 months. Her name is Carina. Welcome, Carina. Welcome, Ashley.
Hey. Yes. So
Hello.
we are excited to share this story. I have worked with Carina for a while, and full disclosure, you can still get your period back, even if you worked with us, and then get what you need and keep working on it. And so Carina and I have actually stayed in contact. I have always been like, hey, you're on my mind. And then we just check in with her, or she would share. And so we have an exciting story, a recovery story for you. It is not without all the pain points and all the struggles. But yes, so Carina came to us with primary amenorrhea. And we'll just kind of kick it off there. If like you kind of just want to give us some background, how long did you have primary amenorrhea? That's kind of silly because obviously, but what was it like getting diagnosed with primary amenorrhea? When did that happen for you? And kind of like fill us in on like, what did it feel like to be going about life being like, so they say, this is what I have, type of thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I always was kind of on the end of getting a later period, just, I was a flyer in cheerleading, super active. And so no one really thought much of it when I was like 12, 13, 14. But once I was 14, I started eating less. Some things happened in my life and full-on eating disorder started. And so at 14 years old, had an eating disorder, went to treatment, was in and out of treatment 4 times, and was told when I was about 18 and hadn't had a period that I had primary amenorrhea and that I probably wasn't ever going to be able to have kids at that point, which I thought was pretty like out there for like only an 18-year-old that's had an eating disorder for at that time like 4 years. And so I didn't really think much of it at all. I was like, whatever, you're full of crap. So I just kept doing what I was doing. Struggled with an eating disorder for probably another 2 years and was out of treatment by the time I was 20. But I still was in very pseudo recovery after treatment. I still had my time in bodybuilding, competed in that, had my time in competitive CrossFit and competed in that. So my body never got a break. It was just always going, never really at a healthy weight, not at a quote unquote sick enough weight to like have a diagnosed eating disorder or be in treatment. But my body was never fully just like rested, recovered. I think since treatment, I had never taken more than 4 days off of the gym in a row. So, just training for like 3 hours a day plus for a good 2 or 3 years after that. And it wasn't until I met my now husband that the whole, first of all, just like using my entire days to work out and focus so much on what I'm eating to the point where it was unhealthy. I needed to get that addressed, but then also just wanting to be a woman. I like actually caring about that because for the, 5 years that I knew I had primary amenorrhea, I didn't really care because I was like, whatever, maybe I just don't want kids then. I'm going to, be a competitive athlete my entire life or whatever. It didn't really mean anything to me. I did not care at all. But when my husband did come into my life was when, well, at the time was my boyfriend, was when I started caring. And it first started just being caring about, I need to stop spending so much time in the gym and stop like thinking so much about food. Like when he'd want to make breakfast for me, not being able to eat it with him because I couldn't track those macros perfectly. It was kind of opened my eyes to this fact that this needs to change. And then on top of that, I don't feel like a feminine woman that should be in this, getting close relationship with someone. That means a lot to me. My husband also has a son. So I was like, and now I'm putting all this like on him. I don't want him, never being able to eat with me and just stopping that relationship growth because of this. And so I just started kind of watching the disordered part of things a little bit more. And I made some progress, gained some weight and stuff, but still was very, COVID happened and I was training for like an hour and a half in 110-degree heat. I couldn't stop working out, even though the gyms were closed. And so once we got married though, when we started talking about a family, I was like, I really, really need to hit the ground running with this. Because now at this point I'm 24 and still have never had a period. So, I tried birth control because that's what, of course, the first women's health doctor told me was going to help. It would jumpstart it, quote unquote. So I took that for maybe like almost a year. And then I figured out all the terrible things that it was actually doing to my body. My AMH was shot completely. And I was like, why would I ever take that? And then when my AMH was shot completely, it was very low. That women's health doctor told me that was pretty much pre-menopausal and I would definitely never be able to have kids unless I went like that week to a fertility doctor and started IVF. So
let's pause right there because I feel like that's kind of where we intersected. I remember you going to that appointment and I think I remember like texting Dani, I was like, I hate when my clients go to doctors and not because I hate doctors, but I'm like, One, because like, I don't know what they're saying to you. Two, I feel like I can't be there, be like, excuse me, but what about this? You know what I mean? Like, just like this like mother hen that's like, excuse me, no, we do not talk about that. You know what I mean? We do not speak death over people like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with her womb. Anyway, so like there's that point. Then there's also, it's just so powerful of an experience, because I feel like you called me right after, like you were like in the car, you know what I mean? Like we were like, you know what I mean?
I was
Like,
in the car just freaking out.
yeah,
Having
you're
my
like,
little
oh
meltdown.
my God, you're like, oh my gosh, right? Because I feel like he was like, you need to freeze your eggs next month, right? Didn't he say that? Or am I making that? Yeah. He was like, if you have any shot, you need to freeze your eggs next month. And I was like, whoa, right? And so then as a coach, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on a timeline of possibly of months. Like, excuse me, right? So I had to like, not like collect myself, but I had to remember, no, what my job is to give you informed information about your health. And so that's when you really spurred me to start digging into AMH, look into the studies. Now we have a whole section of this in our module, spurred on by you. But it was one of those things where I remember being like, hold on. It makes sense that your AMH would be low. You've not like there hasn't been a time in your life right now where you've had enough estrogen to even go down the HPO axis, let alone FSH, enough SFH to mature any of the follicles. I don't think that this is a permanent prediction of what you will be able to do. I think it is simply a reflection of your current status based on being estrogen deficient, right? And come to find out, that's exactly what the research says. And so I love this part of your story is because, and there's nothing wrong with anybody who has chosen to freeze their eggs. You know what I mean? No, nothing at all. Or who has chosen to go down the IVF route. But I just remember you feeling very like, this is my only option. Like, what if this is my only option and I can't risk like not having an option? You know what I mean? So kind of tell us about like, what was your mindset of like, what was going through your head, like the fears of like, but what if recovery doesn't work and I lose this chance to freeze my eggs? Because the way he made it seem like it was like, girl, your ovaries and eggs are toast. Let's just see if we can get anything next month. And that's your best shot.
Yeah. The way he worded it definitely didn't help feel much better, because he was like, we're going to do it. We have to do it next month. We're going to get you going now. I was already getting phone calls like that day, trying to have me schedule things. And he also made it sound like, in all honesty, it's a pretty low probability anyway. And I was like, well, so I'm going to spend thousands of dollars. I have literally like a week to make this decision if you want to get the ground running by like a month from now. And I don't even know if I want to make this decision. I didn't know anything really about IVF at that point. I just felt stressed. I was like kind of in full like panic mode. Like I didn't know what to do, because it was really scary. Just the idea that it could be my only shot while also doing something that I know nothing about, that I was told probably might not even work, cost a bunch of money. We're still not wealthy. We were like newly married. I just started my first actual career, only 24. It was just really overwhelming and really stressful. And so, but I still felt in my gut, even through that there was something they were saying that wasn't right. Like I knew that what my past looked like looks very different than probably a lot of people he sees. I couldn't even find anyone like online, any podcast or anything, the story that sounded quite the same. And so I was like, in a way that makes me feel hopeless, because I can't find anyone's story of primary amenorrhea or, low IVF. So like it was kind of panicking that way, but also in the way of, what if he's never seen this before either? And what if I don't think this fertility doctor man understands 10+ year history of an eating disorder. So I just kind of, when I talked to you, idea just went out of my head. I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to risk that. I'm not going to do it. I didn't feel called. I just felt like I didn't feel like the Lord was calling me to do that. It felt wrong in my stomach. And I was like, okay. And now I have confirmation that maybe that's not my only option. And so I kind of threw that idea out the window. And I think in my heart at the end of the day, it was like, you know, if what my call to do is adopt, then it is that right now then, because this doesn't feel good. So
remember you talking about that of like, you know, I realize I'm not out of options. I'm not against adoption. You know what I mean? And so I love that too. So you had mentioned, that's why I was like, you have to come on the podcast, is that like you weren't able to find anybody similar to your story. Yes, it's encouraging to listen to the HA podcast, but like, it's like all of you guys have proof that like you can ovulate, like you have ovulated before, your body has done that. So can you just kind of dive into like, what does it look like approaching HA recovery when you're like, but I've never seen my body do this before. Like, guys, I don't have any firsthand evidence that my body can do it.
Mm-hmm. It's scary. It's definitely hard. Especially in the sense of, and I know you and I had this conversation many times, but this feeling of HA recovery is hard for anyone in the sense of I'm eating way more than society tells me is okay. I'm exercising way less than I used to. And then society says it's okay. And my body's changing. So that's hard. And that's hard all the way around, no matter what. It's not easy to go through HA recovery and just see the body changes and do the things you have to do to get a period. But while I was doing all that, there was the back of my mind that was thinking, but what if my body can't anyway? And I'm doing all of this for no reason. Like I'm changing my body and everything for no reason. And now I'm going to go over what I need to be at because I'm still trying to get this period. Just all these like what ifs, I think, because I didn't have that evidence that my body was capable of doing it. And that made the process very, very scary. And I think it put a big block in my process where I got to a point where I was like, I'm uncomfortable with my body now. I don't think it's ever going to happen. So I was stuck for like months of just not really progressing in any way whatsoever. And I do think it led to that idea of not knowing whether my body was capable anyway and kind of doubting that it was. So, I mean, it definitely made that hard, like all the what ifs and just kind of lack of trust in my body because it hadn't given me a reason to trust it, but I also had not given it a reason to trust me. So, I think that's important to remember too. It's not my body's fault, but yeah, that's definitely what that was like.
That is so powerful because you're right. It's like technically you haven't given it trust, and that can be really hard to like hear that we have potentially maybe been holding back our body, or not that like, oh, you did this, you know what I mean? But it's like, am I asking something from my body that I'm also not willing to give it? And that's a really tough part in recovery. I don't know, Dani, is there anything that kind of like this like bubbles up? Because, you know, I could talk forever. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely know a lot of people who have had primary HA, and it's just really scary. And to what you were saying, Ash, just like you don't have this comfort of knowing that you've seen it before and you know how it's going to work. So it's almost like feels like more of a blind trust with a lot of fear. I don't know, I'm enjoying listening so far to what happened and what happened next. And I remember specifically pairing Carina with you on the discovery call, Ash, just because you know, this is deep work, and it's not just that the period is missing, but it's all of like, it's the why that it's missing that is the deep work, and like where it's going to get really tricky. But just like always knowing it's possible. This is just like a very exciting excited call to be listening into and like hearing about all you guys went through, and I'll definitely pop in soon with further questions as I feel like, but wait, what happened in this bit?
Yeah, I just love your story over and over, because I don't really think that there was, and this isn't like, I don't want it to be over dramatic, but I don't want us to gloss over like the grit and the struggle. I don't really know if there was ever an extended period of time where like you were like, okay, I could totally do it. Like, it would come and go, but like it took so much grit from you to keep going without this firsthand evidence, with this doctor speaking over you that basically, even if you were to freeze your eggs, it's a low chance, sorry girl, which makes sense. Dani reminds me of this all the time when I go on rants. She was like, look, IVF specialists are not cycle specialists. They are not, you know what I mean? Like they specialize in vitro fertilization. That is what they specialize. And so because I feel like there's a lack of, well, same with like OBGYNs, like, yes, they do all the other things, but they're like trained in surgery, right? You know what I mean? Like and so surgery and IVF isn't the same thing as fully understanding a cycle and knowing what triggers it and how to improve it naturally. Meaning, think about, like, we never go to the doctor and they never say, hey, let me look at your chart. Let me look at your temperatures. Like, what are they doing? How are you feeling?
I mean, in fact, they think it's fake science.
Yeah. Like they're just like, I can't believe that you would ever chart. Like you're for sure going to get pregnant just by looking at your husband. You know what I mean? Or by looking at your partner or whatever. Like they don't see any validity into it. Right. So there's really this massive gap of like body. And think about in an IVF specialist appointment or an OBGYN appointment, nobody's taking the time to teach women actually about their body or body literacy. So that really leaves this massive gap of, well, this is what the medical professionals are telling me. And now, Ashley, you're telling me that there's a way it's possible. You know what I mean? So what is it like? What did it feel like having to move against almost like what every medical professional has told you about the condition of your ovaries?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It actually felt frustrating. It felt like I couldn't trust like anything because I just didn't know. I was like, you got society on one side of the spectrum, these people that claim to be cycle, hormone, fertility experts on Instagram on the other end of the spectrum, my body, me on that other end of the spectrum, my coach on the other end of the spectrum. And it was just all these things that had all these differing thoughts. And I told myself that over and over again, that I was going to just have it be between me and my coach and put all my trust in that. But it's hard when you're constantly bombarded with all these things. And when you just go for your well women's exam and you get bombarded with all these things. And, but I think what helped me know that it maybe wasn't true was like, even like the fertility doctor and my women's health doctor said, just go on the pill and it'll jumpstart it. And I know that's not true. Like, I know I already tried that. I know that just, if anything, did more harm. I think that impacted my AMH too. And I was just like, if you're telling me to do that, then clearly you don't know everything, because that didn't do anything. So I just held on to that and that alone. But it was hard, especially because there was the gaining weight and body changes that went along with it. So I was like, there's that piece of my brain almost that was fighting against that. That was also being like, well, maybe these doctors are right then. And so maybe I just can't. So it was almost like that part of my brain that was pushing back against my body changing so much and, eating so much and all this stuff that was going kind of towards what if they're right and things like that. No matter how much I told my brain to just keep it between me and my coach.
You are so right. I mean, I know that I know this and I know that I've experienced it, but like whenever, like, I think just as coaches, it's so important that we stop and we do like this, like, almost like not like offboarding, you know what I mean? But this like recap, because you're so right. I remember feeling the same way too. I'm like, oh my gosh, like first off, gaining weight in a society that glorifies weight loss is one thing. But then gaining weight when every medical professional has told you, no, the way to fix this is IVF or birth control is like, yeah, it's like we're already swimming upstream, but now like when we're swimming upstream, the big boulder swimming upstream is like the medical professionals being like, here, take birth control, here, take IVF, here, freeze your eggs, here, do this. You know what I mean? And I
That's
remember,
a way out without gaining weight. You got it.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, your weight's fine. You're so healthy. And I'm like, everything coming out of your mouth is actually not helpful. Please stop talking. Just stop talking. If you're not going to educate me, stop talking. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel now. I'm like, just stop.
Yep.
But one of the things that I remember being in this stage of my journey too, and I didn't even have primary, right? But I had 5 years and a million doctors and a million appointments. I finally was like, when I look at someone's bio, I don't freaking care how many kids you have. I don't care about your dog's name. I don't care about what you like to do. I don't care about your fun facts. I actually need to know, do you believe that a birth control pill will fix my hormones?
Yeah, that's going to tell me everything.
Yeah, I actually just need to get to the point. I'm a pretty non-fluff person anyways, in general. Like, I just can't stand it. Just get to the point on, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like with like recipes. I don't care about your dog's excursion today on your way to making ice cream. How do I make the ice cream, right?
That's all I want to know.
That's all I want to know. But it's like one of those things I finally felt like saying, before I even make an appointment, man, before I even take the time to get off of work to go to this appointment and drive to this appointment, I honestly just need to know, what is your practicing philosophy on hormones, birth control? I honestly feel like if people would just put out that statement, it would save so much time, because the amount of doctors that I had to sit through, like I also saw an IVF specialist, and my husband came at the time, and he was, and like the moment he said, yeah, just get on birth control. And then whenever you're ready to have kids, come see me. And I was like, and so he had just got clued in on like the truth about birth control, and he about came out of his chair. And I just already knew that the conversation was over by then, because he just tried to tell me that hormonal birth control is the same as my own hormones, and that's the best next case. I mean, I didn't know about HA then, but he literally looked at my file. I will never forget it. He looked at my file and said, yep, you have HA, and just put it down on the stack of piles that he had. And he was like, so just start taking birth control, and whenever, go make an appointment with the nurse to test your tubes to see if they're open. And I didn't think that that was like an invasive process, and I actually thought it was going to be pain-free. And he said, and then whenever you're ready, we'll just get started with the injections and stuff. And I was just like, okay. And anyway, so I went to the nurse, and so I think like, thank gosh, something like prompted me to ask, is this a painful process? She goes, I'm not gonna lie, it is really uncomfortable. I was like, oh freak no, like I don't even want IVF. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of my missing period. I don't like, no.
Yeah,
you know,
Dude.
I was just like, no, we're not shoving no dye in my fallopian tubes. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah, I was like, stop. Like, I actually just want to know why my cycle is missing.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
They ain't gonna tell you that.
Were you gonna say something? Oh no, she's drinking water now. Oh.
No, I mean, no. I was okay. Yeah. So wait, so back on Carina's story, as wonderful as yours is, Ash.
Yeah, sorry. Rabbit hole.
No, for sure. Okay. So when you just kind of talk about like having discovered, or like what it was like to just be heard, to hear how like broken you are, quote unquote, and just panic is happening from everyone around you. But what happened next? What were you holding on to that kind of kept you going through it? And like, what, you know, we've discussed how difficult it is to swim upstream in this environment. So like, what worked for you?
Well, it was definitely, yeah, it was a really slow swim upstream. There was a lot of I'm stopping here and then I'm going to go a little bit more and then I'm stopping here. But I think well, fear a little bit did, because I was like, if I know that already that for sure I'm not doing any of this, I'm not doing IVF, I'm not doing any of these things, then I have to keep going. It's literally my only option. And so,
y'all, we have been trying to record this for like 30 minutes. So here we go. Take 580. Hey, did you know that we support people with HA, low progesterone, anovulation, short luteal phases, and all of the types of challenges that come up with infertility?
Dani and I are practitioners that have helped hundreds of women beat HA, regain fertility, and get pregnant naturally.
We are here to break the status quo of spending tens of thousands of dollars on IVF treatments for women who have issues that can absolutely be solved naturally.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So we do this with our signature program that restores ovulation to regain healthy menstrual cycles. And if you're ready, get pregnant completely naturally.
On top of our one-on-one sessions, our fertility program even includes a styling session with Samantha Dawn, who is a body positive stylist. She's also our personal stylist.
Yes.
And an expert in helping you to dress your new and nourished body.
This is so important that we don't even need to convince you on how important this is. We want you to relearn how to nourish your body, claim your fertility, and feel confident in your clothes as your body changes. It doesn't have to be painful.
No, yeah, exactly right. It doesn't have to be painful. With a little bit of guidance and support, you can absolutely do this. So if getting your cycle back and if feeling good about the process, if getting pregnant naturally is something you want to do, if you don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on medical treatment for something that you don't have to, we have just the place for you to go. So go to the hasociety.com/coaching to learn more about who we are, what we do, and apply today.
Yeah, we look forward to supporting you.
That was good. Do you like that one?
Yeah, I do like that one. That one's way more us.
Yeah, boom. There you go.
that kept me going, and definitely just continuing to think of, in the decisions I'm making, what is strengthening my relationship with my husband and my relationship with my faith, my relationship with the Lord, because I was still doing things that weren't helpful for that, even though I was quote unquote eating like the amount you're supposed to in HA recovery and things like that. I was still, pretty stressed about getting my training done. Was it as much training as I was doing before my recovery journey? No, but it was still like, this is happening and it's a non-negotiable ever whatsoever. And still tracking my macros to make sure I hit that, 2,500 or whatever it was. So I was still doing things that weren't strengthening that relationship. And so I knew that no matter what, weight gain, getting my period back, anything aside, I still had work to do, because it was taken away from my relationships in my family, with my stepson, with my husband, and with the Lord. And so I just kept doing it, even though it was hard. And even though I'd stop at times and I'd plateau at times, and I'd have multiple month-long plateaus at times. I knew it was my only option. And I knew I still wasn't even mentally at the place I wanted to be at. And so who's to say that I should be getting a period if I'm still tracking and if I'm still having training as a non-negotiable? So I think that, like, just fact checking my mindset in the process was, I'm still not doing everything, was kind of where I was at with that.
I actually love that perspective. It's really important for everyone to do, because we all, at any level of fertility issues, we all get this like, I'm doing everything mindset, and it really feels true in the moment because of how hard you're working. But but the facts, what are the facts? You're still holding on to this. You're still doing that. You've only been doing this for X amount of time. Like all of those things are the actual facts, and everything else is just your emotions about it. And it really helps to face the facts, right? And be like, there is more I could do. So I'm obviously making a choice. Yeah. Okay.
I loved how you were
it's fine.
chatting about like there's like these things were still hurting your relationship. And I think that's a lot of things that people actually don't talk about, is that this is a painful process for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because it kind of shines a light on our habits and behaviors that don't really line up with who we want to be or our values. But then we see ourselves doing it and we're like, wow, like I'm not even happy that I'm doing it. You know what I mean? Like I remember you that was a lot of distress of like, no, I want to be able to take my son to work or to school. You know what I mean? Like, but like, and so like you were kind of talking about how like it really pulls from the person that we want to be, and it's like really going in this opposite direction. And not saying that and it's not always so black and white, right? Like who doesn't love working out? And I love getting it done first thing in the morning. I mean, I don't now. I mean, that's a whole other season, but you know what I mean? Like who doesn't love getting it done the first thing in the morning? So then you have the rest of your day and stuff like that. And so it's just really interesting, like as life changes, as our life situation changes, the inflexibility of those habits, it's not so much those habits themselves, but the inflexibility of those habits really is what caused the tension. And so as we're recovering, it's not just eating more and working out less. It's like, oh my gosh, there's parts of my personality that doesn't line up with who I want to be. And that sucks too. Like that's a whole other turmoil. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. And I, as you know, too, became, an eating disorder therapist during that time. And that really put that into perspective for me of like, wow, I'm literally therapizing these kids that I care about so much to do something or think some way that I'm still not doing. And I'm like, they look at me like I'm like, I got it all figured out. And that was a big kind of fact check for me for sure. Just because at that point I was like, I'm recovered from eating disorder. I'm gonna be this recovered therapist and things like that. And that was just like, it was very convicting. I'm like, I'm still not living by these values in the sense that I can tell these kids to think this way and do these things and they can do it and I still can't. And they think that I'm like, got it all figured out. I'm recovered. I can eat anything and do, it's perfect. And that was very convicting for me too, in terms of that, like living by my values. I'd always wanted to be an eating disorder therapist. And I was finally there, and yet feeling convicted in the sense of, I won't actually truthfully be a role model for these kids as a recovered therapist. And I know what to tell them to do. That's not a problem. But knowing in my heart that I'm not even fully doing that yet was extremely convicting for me. So wanting to live by those values too, of like, clearly I know what to think and what to say to someone struggling with this. So I need to actually start fully living it out and not just partially and living in this limbo, because then I'll constantly be living kind of a lie in a way, if this is what I'm always going to be doing for the rest of my life. So that was very convicting too, in terms of that whole living by your values standpoint thing. But yeah.
I love that you share that, because I know it's so tough to share that. You know what I mean? Just because I remember that was my main thing for whenever I was a nutrition coach, and I was encouraging everybody to work on their health. And just because my version of working on my health looked different than what they were going after, the concept was still there. And so to be out of integrity, I think people who are in coaching, counseling, fitness, things, that is naturally really high of a value for us. It is extremely high. I don't really know. I mean, I don't really know very many coaches that are like, I'm totally okay with telling my clients to do one thing, and I want to go completely against my own advice, and I'm going to do something completely different because it's okay for me. And so while we may be in that limbo area, it never feels great, and it always kind of nags at us, And so I know that was one of my main reasons also for like recovering, is like, I can't spend 5 more years telling people, to do what's best for their health, and I'm choosing not to do it for certain reasons, certain external reasons. Why? Because I just want to keep my 6-pack. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so tough. Okay, so I know that, and like you have mentioned this, that like this has been a slow build up. And so I love that you're sharing that, because I think a lot of people are like, well, it hasn't happened yet. And like, you've been honestly working on this for a while now, and like you've reached it. So there is validity in taking your time. You know what I mean? It's painful longer, you know what I mean? But like, there is validity. There we go. What do you think for you was the last thing, well, not the last thing, the very few things that have helped you get up and over this, to start again, to really push forward and get to this place?
It was kind of, I don't think it was even what typically happens, in the sense that it sounds like it was more stressful than anything. It wasn't necessarily this season of just like complete calm rest. It was more like, so I had my newer-ish job as an sort of therapist, and we moved into an actual house. We got a new dog. There were just a lot of things going on, that to the point where I couldn't really focus as much on tracking macros and just put as much stress onto specifically the food and the period and everything like that. I kind of went through a phase of not stressing about it, but knowing what I needed to do, because I'd been doing it for so long. So I didn't give up on it, in the sense of not stressing about it. But I think just fully surrendering to it and being like, I'm going to keep doing this stuff, but not to this point of where I'm tracking everything I'm eating, and I'm, I just kind of surrendered to the fact of, this is life right now. I know what I need to do. I'm going to keep doing it, but not in this perfectionistic way. And kind of just give my trust in that to God, really was my biggest thing. I was like, I'm just going to put my trust there. I know what I need to do. I'm not going to stop doing it, but I'm not going to keep doing it with such perfectionism, because I have so many other things I need to be focusing on right now. And I just know, and I trust that if I'm doing these main baseline steps, I'm just going to put it in God's hands, and if it's in his will for me, it'll happen when it does. And that really is what did it. After a month and a half, 2 months of doing that, I was like, I got it. So it was almost like letting go of the perfectionism with it, I guess, and not putting as much stress. And you're terrible if your temperatures drop, or you're terrible if you didn't, eat this much this day, or I don't know. It was just like taking the stress and like beating myself up over it, off of it for a little bit, even though my plan was to go back to that. But
yeah, like one of the biggest things, and this isn't for everybody. I think it is. I think that there's this level of trust that has to happen. Like Dani explained it way beginning of like the podcast journey. She was like, sometimes you just have to like jump off this diving board and realize that there is a party down at the bottom. You know what I mean? And I remember being like, I don't really know if I resonate with that, but the more and more, but she's great with analogies, right? I'm always like, yes, what's your next analogy? But it's one of those things of, I have someone in mind now who has recovered and potentially not in this place where she feels like she trusts completely, but I feel like it's one of those things where trust either comes with your cycle or it happens after, but either way, there has to be this restoration of trust with our body to let go, let it go. Just know that your body can do this. And at the end, and I think we finally get to the end of our rope where we're like, I'm tired of trying to force this to happen my way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do you feel
That's
like?
where I was at for sure.
Yeah, right. Like you know what I mean?
I have collected the evidence and now say objectively, this is not working.
And I think it's really hard for women like us who are very driven to where I'm like, I've heard other people say this before. I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm not a crazy person. This is the only thing that I couldn't make happen in my life. For the first time in my life, I met something that I couldn't force, try hard, or be consistent enough to
I've heard that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
exactly what it felt like. I was like, everything was so much easier, it was so much easier to just like, do bodybuilding and do everything that I was told to do when no one else could. And, it was much easier to, I don't know, everything was easier. And like, it just happened. And this one, I was like, oh, well, it's not working. I can't put my perfectionism into this one, clearly. Because it's just making me beat myself up over and over again. So, I don't think though, like kind of disclaimer, you can start that way. I think I had to very much get the understanding of where my body needs to be, get my body into at least a certain place, because it was not even close. So I don't think I could have started with I'm just going to give it and trust. I don't think I could have started there. But I think with the place I was in, where I was kind of just feeling stagnant and feeling like I was constantly doing nothing but stressing about it and beating myself up about it, it was the time where I needed to be like, okay, I'm going to take what I know I need to do and just put trust in and leave the perfectionism behind. And yeah, but I don't think I could have started that way. That wouldn't have worked. So little disclaimer there. The swimming uphill for a while needed to happen first for sure. But yeah, I think I was just in that place where, I don't know, it was time for that. I don't know.
Yeah, so we talk about that all the time, that there has to be some basic groundwork. And so that is the going through the tough motions of increasing your food, decreasing the exercise, you know what I mean? Like yes, 100%. I think what's really interesting too, so I love that we've been able to kind of like tease out like the emotional aspects of all this and the struggle. Tell me a little bit about how going through an identity crisis, I feel like everybody goes through an identity crisis through HA. It's just kind of like, if you didn't know it was coming, let this be your warning. There will be an identity crisis. And that isn't a bad thing, but obviously going through it, what was that for you? Like, what are the things that you had to let go of in order for you to get to this place of trust and healing? Because we can't always bring our old identity into a new healed season of life.
Mm-hmm. It was hard. I mean, I think my entire life, I was some version of the small one. I was the flyer and cheer. Then I was, eating disorder for many years. So the sickly small one. And then I was the bodybuilder and the CrossFit. I was always the fit one. I went through a lot of identity crises, but a lot of them still revolved around this aspect of being small, being skinny. And it was very hard to let that go. And I don't even know why it was at that point. I was like, I know I don't care about it. I have my husband that is totally on board for me gaining weight. And I have, I finally have my relationship in my faith that I want. And I know that that's not anything that God tells me to be. I have my stepson. He doesn't care about that. I have my job. And if anything, if I'm super skinny, they're going to trust me less. I want to be this role model for them. Everything that was in line with my values was kind of happening in my life. And it didn't have to do with my body. But at the same time, I think it was just so ingrained that like, I have to be this because it's what I've always been. And if I let that go of like smallness or fitness or whatever, it's just, I don't know what I thought was gonna happen. It just felt wrong and it felt scary and it felt off, even though I knew all these other things were such a better identity. But I don't exactly know what helped with that. It just kind of, I guess over time of not being that and understanding that that's okay. I think, I mean, and knowing that nothing changed in my life.
I know what happened.
You know? Okay.
I know what happened.
I need to know.
So yeah. So, and this is just a really important message for everyone to like keep going, is that in doing the work and being focused and asking the questions and showing up and being curious about what I'm doing and having that conversation with yourself about like, okay, well, you know, I want to be an eating disorder therapist. So it's actually serving me to have a better body, like a higher body weight, you know, going through all of that, revisiting it over and over again, reflecting on what you're doing, reflecting on your goals, looking at your behaviors, yada, yada, that process, doing it over and over again, neurologically rewires you. And that is why you have to show up and you have to put in the reps, even when you don't feel like it. And that is why it doesn't happen overnight. And you look back, right? You can zoom out and look back and be like, oh, wow, I do think differently now. I do see the world a little differently. I am now different. But it happened so slowly and in such small tweaks and over such time that you're like, I don't even know how I got here, because it was just so little that you just chipped away, but you changed the chemistry of your brain. And it's weird because you expect to change it when you change the chemistry of your brain to be completely different, but you're not. The voice is still there. The fears are still there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Still there.
Just doesn't look like what we thought it would.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Yep. It was a slow, constant rewiring of,
and this is what it is like with primary amenorrhea. Primary amenorrhea, it is that it takes longer.
Yeah. Yeah, it does for sure. I think there was a little piece in the eating disorder of, I don't know, there was a little while where almost the primary amenorrhea was like an accomplishment of cool. Like I'm like that, like
right.
Sick. I made it. There was that little period of time. And so I think rewiring that too, like there's a lot to it. And but it is important. And so I think you might be in a place where you don't know what's going on and might think that your brain will never rewire. I know this from myself and also from patients I work with of like, what if I am in this body, I'm just always gonna, you know, hate myself then, or not be able to accept myself. And it's just not realistic if you're constantly, you know, reminding yourself and reframing and fact checking and doing all these things. It's not going to be possible for your brain to keep this wiring of, I only can be okay with myself if I'm thin, if you're actually doing the work to not think that way, because our brains don't work that way. It's not a thought process that we're born to have. So it's not just going to sit there forever and ever, always. But,
yeah, I love this, because this is the conversation that people need to hear of. This takes time. And like, I think like Dani and I can attest to it. Like there's still moments where we have to identify that, oh, that thought wanted me just to agree with it and circle back into an old habit. And that like rewiring is a continuous nurturing process of choosing to not engage,
doing something different every time.
And it's not as painful as it will be. And that's why I think, again, when it comes to body image, which is obviously a huge component in the fear of recovering, why we don't want to recover, all these things of, you know, I encourage you to give it a year after you've recovered, and then kind of come and talk to me about what your body image is like, because I promise you, you're going to be able to say something. I can't explain it. I don't know when it happened, but eventually I just started to get more comfortable. And the thing is like, that's not a sexy sell.
It's not. It's really not.
It's not a sexy
I don't love every part of myself always right now. It's not a self-love, I love every part of my body journey necessarily. It's not that exciting. There's still days where it's not that great, but it just doesn't have to define you, I think, is the biggest thing. And over time, it doesn't feel like it has to, because you're seeing the evidence over time. You don't see it right away of like, wow, so many of the things in my life are still either the same or better. And my body looks this way. So everything I was telling myself for so long is clearly a lie, but it takes the building of the evidence to be able to believe it. But you're right. It's not sexy. And like, yeah, you're going to love your body 100% the instant that you get your period back. No, that's not necessarily realistic, I guess, for everyone. But
and I think, unfortunately, in like today's health and wellness world, where everyone wants to sell a package, you know what I mean? To where it's like, sorry, I'm going to look at you sideways and with massive amount of suspicion if you're like, and then at the end of our time together, you will be able to achieve a positive body image, neutrality, appreciation. I'm like, you're a liar, because that's not how the brain works. I don't want to believe you that that's possible, but it is really like there's like no sexy packages that is like, in time, as you sit in discomfort, you will eventually get to this place where you stop being at war with your body, and that's what's worth it. But I can't promise you that in 3 months. I can't promise you that in 6 months. You know what I mean? And I can't promise you that it's not going to take work, and that it's not going to take some maintenance, nurturing, and you know what I mean? And so it's just really interesting that every client that I've had, not one of them has been, and Ashley, I still hate everything. You know, that's just not what's happened. What I've seen, especially as I followed with clients, you know what I mean? That they're like, you know, I'm not at war today. And that feels good. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. What if that is living your best life? Like, I'm of this belief that I don't think you have to love your body to live your best life.
No,
and I don't
you
think
absolutely don't.
And I don't think that loving your body means that you're obsessed and you're taking tons of selfies. I actually think that leads to a whole lot of other issues, but that's for another.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been awesome. We have to wrap up, but okay, full context, let's just clear this up with like the stats. You had no period for how many years? Exactly.
I got my first period when I was 25.
When you were 25, and your AMH levels, you did testing, you figured that stuff, like you saw all the hard work you did. Now that you zoom back, you see all of that hard work you did. We just went over it in this whole call. You improved your AMH levels, right?
Yep. They got back to normal. Not even concerned. I don't know exactly what they are, but from premenopausal, quote unquote, to normal.
I think
that's
they were
crazy.
0.765, and now they're like at 3.64.
So you restored your fertility.
You know better than me.
Look at you. So huge congrats, Carina. We're so excited for you and for the hope that it brings all the other people listening who have just had HA for crazy amounts of time or have never had a period at all. It's freaking possible. And I think the best takeaway for people right now from your story is like, there was no like aha moment for you. There was no like, oh my gosh, I just like I've totally flipped the mental script here. And like, you were where you were at any given time, chipping away. There were highs and lows and plateaus, but like you just kind of kept going. And that's.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. It wasn't like, this is 100% woo. It's a complete aha moment. And I know I'm getting it. And I got it. It came out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. So inspiring. I know a lot of people are very thankful for it today.
Of course. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to. Yeah. I appreciate it so much. And everything that I've learned from you guys has been why I'm at where I'm at today. So
thank you. And thanks, Ashley. And we'll see all of you guys next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening today, guys. Please subscribe to the podcast, and if you could head to iTunes specifically and leave a rating or review, that would help so much because it makes it easier for other people with HA who are Googling around to find the podcast really easily. So if you do that, you're doing a service to all of the women